Welcome to our Behdini Beginners course. Today's class is number 17. This is lesson 7, the whole lesson. And the reason for this is that it is a very idiomatic lesson. So the whole lesson is on symptoms, health symptoms. And this is all audio recorded, at least in the Tehuki dialect. Hopefully, if it's not yet in the Zacholi dialect, it can get that way soon by somebody on the team there. I'm looking at the Zaho book here. Let me look at the Tehuki book. There are some significant differences between Zaho and Tehuk in this lesson. So you really want to check with your audio recordings, check with your language helpers, and realize that a lot of this lesson is very idiomatic. And just go through it, find what you need. People who work in healthcare, or who work with women and children, they're going to deal with this a lot because they oftentimes will talk about their ailments. Sometimes that's what older people talk about. And, you know, that's important to be able to understand them and empathize with them, understand what they're talking about. Take them to a doctor perhaps if they need it. When I was working with Kurds in Virginia, I did so much taking Kurds to the doctor. So if you're working with refugees, these are really important things to learn. Obviously, the words are going to be different in different dialects. Sometimes they don't have a word, so they make up a word, or they'll use an Arabic word. Okay, so you're not going to memorize all of this, but just be aware of what's here. Listen to it, maybe learn it by recognizing it. And then at the bottom of page 146, you definitely want to learn all these words that have to do with the body. And then section B, conversation and role play. You need a partner to practice with here. And you can, try a variety of these things. Once you go through section A and you get, some of those symptoms down, the way that they're expressed, whether it's with the be verb or habun haba, or however it's expressed, then you can plug it into section B here, into your conversation. Down in part 2, where it talks about pregnancy, please notice that, did I talk about this? Well, I think I talked about this, or I should have talked about it in the last lesson. Pregnancy is a very sensitive topic, and men, let me look at you while I do this discussion here. Men don't ever talk about your wife being pregnant. That's just a no-no. Even if she's 9 months pregnant and she's serving fruit to everybody and it's obvious that she's pregnant, don't talk about her being pregnant. People are very afraid of the evil eye, and they're afraid that the babies will be hurt if you talk about them. Women also tend to not talk about pregnancy very much, even when they're fully 8-9 months pregnant and it's obvious that they're pregnant. Now, don't do the mistake that I did. And when you're comfortable with your friends, and they would normally want to talk about it with you, and they're just fat, don't ask them, are they pregnant? Just don't talk about it. Because that's very embarrassing if they are kind of looking that way, but they're actually just fat. Don't ask them if they're pregnant. However, if you're the one that's pregnant and you're happy about it with your language helper, with your close friends, it's okay to talk about it. And this is how you talk about it. So let me share my screen again, and then you can see. So this is how you do it. And you could say, as nasachem. Well, everybody knows that means I don't feel well. But it's a euphemism for I am pregnant. So women, married women, be careful. If someone asks you, how are you? If you say, azna sachem, they might think that you're telling them that you're pregnant. So if that's not the case, then find something else to say. Go back to section A and say exactly what's wrong with you. My stomach hurts or something like that, okay? And then if you are pregnant, then, or you're talking to someone who is, you can say chen maya, which means how much is left. But idiomatically, it means how much longer before the birth. And you could say Zike min haftavia. I'm 7 months pregnant. So my stomach is 7 months. There's your verb, is. And it means I'm 7 months pregnant. In any event, after you talk about this, definitely say something like, may God be with you. My stomach hurts. That's also could be a euphemism for being pregnant. So in any event, whether you're pregnant or sick, at the end you want to say salamatibit or salamatia. So in the Zaho dialect, so that they understand that you hope that they feel better soon. All right, now let's look on page 148 at the nouns from verbs. On page 160, you will learn how to make nouns from verbs. For now, simply listen and repeat each izafe phrase, imagine the situation, and use gestures to demonstrate the meaning of each phrase. So you know that hatten is the infinitive for come. So this is now a noun, his coming. Hatana is izafe. Hatanawi means his coming. And you can go down through this whole list in that way. So let's look on page 160 and we'll see the grammar. Also, adjectives from verbs. So let's look at chew, because you know that verb really well. Okay, so chew is past tense of go. It's the part of the infinitive before the N. And then you get this I with a hat on the end of it. So you could describe someone, the men, Zalam, 8 is izafe, Chui, the departed men, the men who left. Okay, so let's go look at page 160 and 162 to understand this grammar. The rest of this, you can fill in the blanks, use your appendix S for answer keys and for listening scripts for your language helper to read to you. Audio recordings, section C. Tic-tac-toe with a friend, be sure and say them before you cross them out. Go through your vocabulary. With the vocabulary, different symptoms use habun haba or habin haba. Different ones use just the simple to be verb, and different ones use these. So you really have to learn which verb to use when, and it's very idiomatic. So it's just a lot of learning of new things in this lesson. General health nouns on page 155, things like blood, bone, diet, saidali, pharmacy, rachet, the prescription, sahat, health, fas. It's a medical test as compared to imtihan, which is an academic test. Notice these comparisons. Kul, infected. Kuliati, infection. Kuchik, cough. Kulik is like a small infection, which is interpreted as a lump. And then kis or koner, a cyst. This is in the Dahuki dialect. Lots of idiomatic stuff here. And euphemisms. Okay, E, you do that with your language helper and or the audio recordings. F, just fill in the blanks there. Check it with Appendix S. In Part 2 on page 157, you want to practice with your Appendix E in Book B and your Appendix C. And for your Appendix C, there are 2 strips that are specific to Lesson 7 that talk about medical terms. Okay, check all of this with your answer key, your language helper. Now look on page 160, and we're going to look at these nouns from verbs. Nouns can be formed from the infinitive of verbs. These nouns are then feminine in gender, and exceptions to the general rule are underlined in the chart below. So, for example, the verb to come, hatten be weda. The infinitive is hatten, and this by itself is a feminine noun. All the infinitives in the dictionary, in the language, are feminine nouns. Oh, let's say 95% of them are feminine nouns. Okay? So if you want to use it in a sentence, then you take that infinitive, and it's feminine. So then you're going to use the feminine izafe ending to put it into an izafe phrase and make it say, for example, hatanawi, his coming, his arrival, his appearance, his approach, his entrance, his advent. Okay. Or the upcoming vacation. Ijaza is vacation. So ijaza, hati, that's the adjective. Let's do that later. Okay, let's just focus on the infinitive and the noun. So the first 2 lines of each line in this chart. Okay, let's look at mon. Mon bamina. This means, this is the verb for to remain or stay. So what is the noun? The noun is simply the infinitive. Okay, so what's the noun here? Mon. So you plug that word into the chart right here, and that's your feminine noun. And the example of that is here. Manawi, his stay, his visit. Okay. Let's look at chun bicha hara. This means to go. So you're going to take that infinitive, and that is the new feminine noun. And then if you use it in a phrase, an izafe phrase, chunawi, his going away, his leaving, his departing, his departure, his exit. Okay. About to return. Zivrin bezivra. That means to return or make a U-turn or turn around or repent or something like that. Okay, so that in this case, when it's a noun, so that is your infinitive. That goes here to make a feminine noun. And then let's see how it's used in a phrase. Zivrina we, his return, his coming back, his homecoming, his arrival. All right, so you can carry on with this. Now, 2 down from here. Bechikbun, bechikbiba is the technical term, the technical verb for to give birth. But it's dijkbun, which is the noun for birthday for this verb. So it's not bechikbun, it's dijkbun. So in this case, you would say, for example, his birthday. Tarikh is the history of tarikha, dijkbu na we. So an izafi phrase inside an izafi phrase. So the history of his birthday means idiomatically his birthday. Or you could say the day of Ruja Dijkbu na we. That's another way of saying his birthday. Okay, so I'm going to let you go through this whole list. You can check your answers in Appendix S. And then on page 162, it tells you about how to form adjectives from verbs. And I see I have a misspelling there. Okay, so adjectives can be formed from the past stem of the verb. To form the past stem, you drop the in or n from the infinitive, and then you add I with a hat to the past stem to make the adjective. Okay, so we have some examples here. The verb for sleep is so sleep is nivisten binva. Nivisten binva is the verb for sleep. So you're going to take that infinitive and you're going to drop the in ending. And that's how you get nivist. So you take your infinitive, nivisten, and you drop the in ending. And that gives you nivist. And then you add I with a hat, and that makes nivisti. And the verb to sleep then becomes an adjective, sleeping, like the sleeping child. Okay, let's take another one. To be frightened, tirsan betirsa. Here's the infinitive, tirsan. So you drop that n, just the n, you don't drop a's, you just drop n's or ins. So you get the past stem, which is then tirsa. You add the I with a hat ending, and you get tirsai, frightened. And one more example. Rinishten, rina, is the verb for to sit. So rinishten is the infinitive. You drop that in ending. And you end up with the past stem, which is rinisht. And then you add the I with a hat ending, and you get rinishti. And then instead of a verb to sit, you have the adjective sitting. Okay, so now you go back to page 160 and write the adjective form of the verbs in the charts. Okay, let's go back to 160. Here we are. And this time we're going to fill in the adjective form of the verbs in this chart right here. Okay, so we start with our infinitive. We drop the in ending. That gives us hot. And we add the I with a hat. That gives us hati. So you write that here on this side over here. And in that case, it would be the coming or the upcoming vacation. Something like that. Okay, so how about the next one? Stay. And in English, we think of it as the remaining, the staying part, whatever it is. So mon is our infinitive. Start with mon. Get rid of the n ending so that we have our past stem, which is ma. And then we add the I with a hat, and we get my. So my is going to be written right here. And it means like the remaining ones or the remaining things, whatever. So in the store, sorry, the black carrots are not remaining, or there are no more black carrots, or there never were any black carrots in some cases. So you would say gezerit rush, black carrots, na, mai, na, because of the present perfect, because it's in the verb to be is there because it's plural, na. So not remaining here is an adjective. All right, let's look at chun bichahara, to go. So we want to get an adjective that means something like gone or departed. Okay, so we start with our infinitive, which is chun, and we get rid of the n ending. So that leaves us chu. So chu plus I with a hat, chui, the gone man, the man who left. So al zalame chui kia, who is the gone man? Who is the man who left? So let's say you're at somebody's house and there was a man that was there and poof, then he decided to leave all of a sudden. After he leaves, you can ask your host, al zalame chui kia, who is the gone man? Who is the man who just left? You'll also notice that when you want to talk about Eva Chui, that means last month or the month that, on month. And you also have Sala Chui, last year, the gone year. You can also do Chui. On days, you know, like when you want to talk about the days that were here that are no longer here. So that's where some of these idiomatic phrases come from. All right, so you can carry on with these. Let's see if there are any. So when you talk about living or alive, this is an exception to the rule. Jian is the word for to live, the infinitive for to live. And when you use it in the noun form, you say jiana we, his life. But when you talk about it in the adjective form, you don't say jiai, you say sah. And they'll ask you, are your parents still alive? Dekubabeta sah, and are they alive? So sah is the exception to the rule here. And on the next page, I gave you the answer. Resurrected or risen would be rabu, is your infinitive. You get rid of the n. You add the I with a hat, and you get rabui. So rabun means to get up or stand up or rise or arise. So rabui is resurrected. So Jesus is the Zalame Rabui, the resurrected man. You can talk about him at Easter time. I don't see any other exceptions. Okay, so there you have it. Work on your adjectives. And in the G, the reading, you're looking for the adjective in part 2. So, dit dedicahe vakaria. Here's your adjective right here. Vakari. There's that ending. So what does vakari come from? Vakarin. Vaka is to open. So you take vakarin, you get rid of the in, that becomes vakid, and then you add I with a hat. That means open. Opened or open. Vakidi. All right, and then you can do conversations and storytelling game. I'm going to let you do this on your own because it's so different between the Zako and the Dahuki dialects. But you see what to ask, and then you see the page numbers. If any of these are wrong, please let me know and I can correct them. Okay, so work through this one at a time like we normally do together. And some of these are pretty important to have on the tip of your tongue too. So go for that. In the storytelling, your dialogue between two friends, have them discuss symptoms of bad health. You know, you could even talk about COVID in this situation, or whatever is meaningful for you at the moment. Make it meaningful for you so that it becomes a really relevant exercise. And in J, in the writing, you can check your answers in Appendix S. In K, you're going to write out your medical history using dates and the symptoms or diagnoses in this chart. So you can work with a language helper to make sure you write these things correctly. And if you ever need to go to a doctor, you can show him this medical history. You can write a paragraph that describes your current good or bad health. Write the statement first in English and then translate it into Kurdish. Obviously work through this with your language helper. And homework. All right, so hope that's helpful for all of you. This is a lesson that you really want to work a lot with your language helper, your neighbors, your spouse, but mostly work with native speakers so that you get these really good. And there might be some differences. And if you find some things that are significantly different from the way they are in your textbook, if you will please write them down and get audio recordings and send them to me, either by email or by WhatsApp, that would be great so that I can include those in future editions of the book. All right, happy language learning. We'll see you next week. Hang in there with everything. Bye for now.